Yeah, thank you for having the patience after such a long day and these debates to still be ready to listening to me. I feel honored to be here, and before I start, I have to say that I feel quite enthusiastic, and after I heard about how you're struggling with problems and funding and all these different difficulties of a pioneer phase in implementing such a model, this sounds maybe a bit strange, but I have the feeling that there's an energy in the room and that people are involved in the room. For me, as a spectator coming from outside, that it feels like something really good is happening, and that it's something, if I look at the focuses of the projects and what you talked about, it feels really good, and I think it's really worth the struggle. After we had luxurious funding, not now anymore, but in the years before, and I will try to talk also about these technical aspects of the project. I can say this easily here on the stage, but I think when I look back to the first days when we started with the project, and no one completely no one thought in the regions where we started the project that this was come to a good end. I have the feeling it's worth struggling in some way. But look at the projects, and it's not that I have any recipe how it works, but I show you a few examples just how we came from the process that we went into villages to the process where we have a vision. So I try to focus myself on how to come in this, what I call a translation process, from what people in the village articulate as their main interest to something that can be solved, or you said earlier, this is too utilitaristic, but can be tackled by artistic strategies. And as I think every one of you is involved so much in the process, I skip the part where I try to say what I think are main elements of how the project was developed in France and came to us. I think that may not be part of our focus, and then I still want to bring in mind, even if all of you know it, that when we look back now to a project that started in 1990 with the protocol, we talked already, or you talked already about how this may be a document that could be reviewed from these days' perspective. But it was, let's keep this in mind, in artistic innovation. It was a rebellious artist sitting somewhere in Paris and thinking to leave the central of France and going into the region and starting something by writing an artist manifesto. The whole project started, and that's I think is still important in the development of the project. At least what I believe in values of the project is that it was an artist manifesto. It was no institutional paper. It was no academic paper. It was an artist really fed up with how art was organized away from people who should have their own interest and stake in it. And we should maybe see it in an historical perspective from 30 years as something that has this origin. And when we look at the first projects coming from France, I'm still sort of admiring it, what they could do there in these really small villages in Bourgogne. Then one has also to keep in mind that the project in Vassy was full of conflicts, that it was immense role conflict between the artist and the patrons also in the beginning in the village, and that the project lasted 10 years from 1997 to 2007. And that's such a long time that you can't explain it to any reasonable funding people. 10 years in working on a project that was broke up in the middle of the process and began again. And if we look at another reference example that was at least intriguing for me to go into the project and try to work with all this stuff. Nathalie Crasset's Trébedan School, it was from 2007 to 2015. So we talk about really long periods of projects, and that's maybe one reason more to renew my plaidoyer to think about if state-run funding for mediation in the first phase would be something reasonable also here. And as Christina said, I don't know if it's frustrating or motivating that I should say from where it started and where we are now. I made this this curve, and it took a long time from 1990 to 2010 when people from France came over and said, would you be interested in the project? And we started in 2010, really poorly funded. With the mediation process in the first project, and it took time until 2017, 7 years, where we were completely without any success in convincing important political people in improving funding for mediation. 7 years where people looked at me when I came in a ministry and said, this is really something people need out there in villages, and they said, you're fantasizing, people don't need art in villages or in regions, and it is a long period of experiences they made. So when in 2017 the Kulturstiftung des Bundes, the federal agency for cultural funding, funded the project with 2 million for 5 years. This was the effect of a long political squabble with people in the political context, but it also was maybe a natural learning process by people in the funding sector to think about that you have to think the logic of cultural production the other way around, and that makes sense to have really let's say, expensive projects on some point somewhere in the region to have sort of a lighthouse example of what can be done if you think in an innovative way with artists in the region, and seeing if it gives a good example for other places, other sites, and other groups of patrons. So I have one nice little experience. Someone who said in the earlier discussion that you should not bring designers in the projects. Nathalie Crasset was a designer, but I believe strongly in the integrative power of art, of liberal art. But we have an example here it's in the northern part, really northeast of Germany, quite close to the Baltic Sea, and the artist in this case exceptionally is an architect and designer. It's Jakub Szczesny from Warsaw, and I try to just explain in a few minutes how it came from entering the community, like it was said in workshop A before, entering the community and identifying the problem. Süßedorm is a real small village. It has a history of shrinking, like all the villages around. So many people left, especially the young and educated. You have seen already here for a moment the manatacle of the village. It's the former school. It's empty now, and no longer in use, so there is no education institution anymore there, and we came there, and I just say this additionally because we talked about how do I come in the workshop, how do I get a group of commissioners, and we came there in most of the cases in the East German villages where we are active by going out and going to asking people in the political administrative context, where can we go and talk about in cultural practice, mediation and neue Auftraggeber, where where you have many different people with different interests, but please don't bring us into the art scene. That was not disrespectful against artists or the cultural scene, but we said, look for people who are thinking non-orthodox in their villages about improving their villages. We are really interested in talking to them. And then it was interesting, we came to many different places, and we just explained how projects we had in France and one in Germany worked, and then said, look at the outcome. So one mayor of a very small village said at one time, if this is art, I'm in favor of it. That's not what you like to hear as a curator normally, but there's some realism in it. If this is art, and if the field of art is that broad, then maybe it can be of help in a situation where we really need help in our village. So it's a debate where we came into the fire department house. It's when you come touch down to the basics in a village, and where we didn't talk about art projects. We talked about what can be improved here, what do you need here, what do you feel about the village, and we went into these villages only in cases that people gave us a call, or that someone said, talk to the mayor of this village. She's cool and she would like to work maybe with it, but she doesn't know about your project. So we relied completely on recommendations and on people calling in themselves and not going into communities and saying, we have something and we heard your village has a problem and I want to solve it. So we try to, there's a seduction to do this, I know, but we try to stay away from this practice. And to make a long story short, because it took several meetings here, because you never get the people all together at one table. You had difficulties to bring the young with the old together, whatever. And what you see here is the first commissioner's articulation of what they want, what they really need. And don't be afraid, it sounds banal. This is a map of the village, and the red marks in the map are just the places at junctions and streets where they want benches. And when we came back to Berlin and told friends they want benches, they said, this is not about art, and if they want benches, they can buy a bench in the market. But why I used exactly this example for my presentation is that these people had an idea about what was missing in the village, but they had no medium to articulate what they would develop. So the bench is sort of a nostalgic image. You're sitting, your grandfather is sitting in front of his house on a bench, and times were nice or something. It is an idea of that if enough people sitting on benches in villages where everyone uses a car and is driving fast in and out of the villages, that benches could help people to begin communication again. They have the feeling, and the longer you talk to them, and I would prefer, it's just my perspective and very subjective, to use interviews as a good medium to talk with people, to ask them about benches, about experiences, about how life in the village is happening these days. And the more you talk, and it's much talking, the more comes out. It's about being afraid of going to your neighbors, maybe, after so many times after the political change and the end of GDR. Is it about that the youngers are going out by cars and we have no language anymore to talk with each other? So we have really in-depth problems in this village, and no one will tell this, a stranger like me or Holger Friese, a mediator there, after the first meeting. It takes some time, and it was not my idea, but Holger's idea, to ask Jakub Szczesny, who is quite famous in Poland, I think, for and also collected in the Museum of Modern Art with design works, for finding intriguing visual solutions or commentary on public space. This was more the question, how can you comment maybe on a public space where things do not work anymore, instead of having sort of a solution for people and solving their problem, which may be impossible. So you see Jakob on the right with the yellow cap coming to Zyzedom, looking at the map with the red marks and the commissioner's wish, please bring us benches. And meanwhile, that's part of mediation after, this is after, with almost a year after the first meetings. So it's a long period of time. And we knew already that this village has many problems more. It has problems even to get water in the Löschteich, the pond in the middle of the village, where you have the water resource for extinguishing fire. They had so many problems where things and infrastructure could not organize anymore. We had, and that's part of what I want to describe as a process, we wrote this down accurately like accountants. We accounted everything people told us about what this village has as problems or as infrastructure lacks or experiences. And we call it the Auftrag, the commission, in the smaller part where we say, what do they want? They want communication points at junctions and bring people together. They want something in their commission to bring this village alive again in terms of direct communication. And after talking about benches, they added a certain point. They said, we also need a space where we can motivate people to leave their houses again and not sitting there like in a bunker in the evening, but going outside and starting communication again. This still sounds not very spectacular, I think, but Jakob, who you see here in the old school building, came up with finger pointing on this school building and saying this school building, this huge architecture in the middle of the village, is maybe not just your problem. You always look around. No one mentioned this school, but everyone hated looking at this example of what went worse in the last 30 years. He also came up after a very short debate with a first artistic sketch, and when someone said you have to trust into art and its abilities, and I think here's the point, even if an architect and designer did it, to say that the surprise that is in artistic processes is the main part of what New Patterns is about. And his proposal was dismantling the school and making the school the solution for the problems of the village. And for me, this is in some way also symbolic. For me, is it what's fascinating for me about New Patterns. You're quite far away from it. Can you see it? It's the school collapsing. You see the walls of the school still, and there's the fire engine pumping water out of a pond. And architecturally spoken, it's easy. School, basement, dismantling the upper structures, using material of the upper structures as a roof construction, and that was now a point in the debate where we listened carefully. They said they need in this pavilion, in this building, in this new room for coming together, they need a kitchen, they need so much infrastructure. And Jakob said, this is wasting money, energy, and resources. You have it in the school, so why we want to build it anew and have the old school next to it rotten down? And so he made the proposal, to bring in all infrastructure, to reuse all infrastructure from the old school building to have the new common space. You see the blue thing or grayish blue thing is the water. And it looks in the end, oh, the projector is not so kind to the drawing, not so important. It looks in the end as the school building, a typical GDR industrial architecture. You see still the concrete elements and the basement and the new roof structure, which is designed exactly in this angle that most rain water coming down will be gotten from the roof down into the pond. And looks like a Japanese garden. And the idea is, I think, in this way of thinking and debating between Jakob and the group, where the mediator stepped more and more out of the dialogue, it was a heated debate among them, among Jakob and the group, what they want for their life in this village. How should the village be in future? How will communication be? And I think this is an image that shows a way of making clearly visible again that utopian thinking and utopian solutions, how art can develop it, is something useful for a village that maybe has not so much utopian hope anymore. That's just part of the process. I want to insist is really important that Jakob was half a year away with working on his sketches that you have seen it now already, and came back and presented it in the most serious way, like he would present it in a multi-million-dollar commission to an industrial company. He was really, he was nervous. He was standing there explaining it. It was taking people really, really serious in their village about what they want, what they need. So just some impressions anecdotally, and this is from the Auftrag, which we always, I still think it's important, use like a contract. It has no legal liabilities, but it makes clear that you, as a commissioner, are responsible for the project, and that you're really in it, and that you stay for it, that you use your name for it, and that you go into the village and say, I'm a commissioner, and I'm really working on this project, and I won't leave Jakob Szczesny alone. If someone is criticizing him in the village, we are a group, and we are responsible. And it's a formal act. And in the beginning, I didn't believe in formal acts like this and thought this strange pathos maybe. After having seen 20 projects, I think this is a very, very important act for them and for us taking serious that they are commissioners. At that point, it's clear that I'm not important as a mediator in a way that I manage the project. It's important who commissioned. And in the end, now comes the second part of the story. It's a very short part of the story because the reality is that this school building I've shown to you is not existing yet. Still people are working behind the scenes on funding it. The first funding that already was there was ruined by political disruptions right there on site, and that's something that sounds like a failure. But I think for me it's very important when I talk about new patterns and my experiences that I talk about processes that are disrupted, processes that need a relaunch and a second relaunch. That we have experiences that it's so frustrating standing at night in a cold room next to the dome and the next larger administration level, and people say, but we won't give these 20,000 euro this necessary part of the funding, and you go home and you don't have the 20,000 euro, and you know you need another year to do the funding. Does this sound utopian and motivating? Maybe not, but it's part of the experiences we made, that it's good also, coming back to the funding, to have mediation in a comfortable situation take the situation and come back next month and next year to work on this project. This is still on the run, but you remember these people said in their commission, and we take commissions very serious, that they want benches in Süßedom. And Jakob found his architectural solution. I think it's a genuine artistic approach to have benches. I would describe them, if you ask me, like fitness instruments for village communication. It's not really a bench to sit down and looking at the TV or the nice landscape around. It's something that you have actively to use together with someone else to bring people together. And it is built, and magically this second part, not so important part it seemed for the commission, is now about to be produced industrially as an edition, so it could be given to other people as well. And it's a Süßedom bench. That's the title of the piece. And two parties have one part of the bench, bring it together, couple it, and you can use it, as you have seen there on the sketches, in intimate or open situations. You can use it like sitting on a balcony and looking at the village, or like hiding from them. And it was properly introduced at the Ernte Dankfest, I don't know it in English, when you celebrate the harvest in autumn with a big procession. It was revealed there. And that's how it is used. And this is the less spectacle, I think, about the project, but maybe as at the stage of the project right now, the most important thing for the village to see the success, to see something that is visible, that you can use, and that meets expectations when you started the project. So enough from Süßedom, and a short impression merely, than giving such a long introduction to the village about Beeskow. And I used this second example, Simon Denny's proposal for Beeskow, while we are in the middle of a political debate that shows, I think, where we are with new patterns all over Europe right now. We have more different political, a more difficult political context right now. So in Beeskow, where you see right now, where I am, sorry, where you see Simon's sculptural proposal, we convinced politics. We got, so in the representative political meetings, we got a complete approval for the project, but we were forced in this mood of increasing populist rhetorics in politics these days. We were forced to have another process by asking people in the city. So we come from month to month in additional political processes to really convince people and campaigning for the project. So when the French people there in the 90s made their projects, it was more about convincing the mayor and doing the project, or solving inner village problems. Right now we solve inner city problems, but still have to do a real genuine campaigning work to make possible to get the political backup for the funding, which is frustrating and a challenge and a new part of what the reality of new patterns is these days. If you look at Beeskow, it's a problem easily told. Beeskow is a post-industrial city. Even if they still have a wood production plant, it's no longer that they have thousands of people, of course, working there. It had this glorious heritage. We heard about the importance of industrial structures in socialist times, and even if it's still there as a privatized industrial plant in Portuguese ownership these days, it's of course that that what was the center point of Bisco is gone, and people said they didn't talk at all about these heritage problem, about that you don't talk anymore about your history, or that you have no feeling where maybe the village come from. They talked about that this village is always empty. So that diagnosis was the marketplace is empty and this is a dying city, which is just not true. They are a quite prosperous city. They still are growing, and the idea that the city is empty is sort of a subjective impression of people looking at the marketplace and having the feeling that what they see there, the lack of communication, that what happens meanwhile digitalized is the main problem of the city. And Simon Denny's proposal was quite intriguing, because he said your problem is that you're doing all these activities in the cities, but that you can't see it, that you live in a digital hidden world, and that you don't meet each other anymore. And he came up and convinced, to my surprise, the patrons group by showing how physically real life internet and digital reality politically was in former times in the 80s and 90s. And he made the proposal in this city that everyone felt empty, to bring up structures in the middle of the city and work at the same time on a digital platform just for this city, for this village, to connect activities of people in their spare time, in their football club, in whatever they are doing, linking it and publishing it on sculptures that are shaped after the form of the wood structures that were built all the time through GDR in Bisco. And that's in the end what is the proposal right now, to having a digital portal and having sculptures in the middle of the cities, where you could read in real time what people are doing, what action is happening in the city, and that you have sort of a memorial in the middle of the city at 4 places in the city, showing the activity like in a fever thermometer, to make clear what's happening and what the activity is, and at the same time to have something that you can't move around, that you would see definitely in the city in being confronted with it in Bisco. So that's what I wanted to show you. Much of what we're doing now, and I think 50% of what we're investing, is negotiating projects and making possible that good solutions and good proposals and visions by artists really could be realized. And this is then happening not just in villages, but in so many different places, like in Greifswald, in an industrial architecture structure, where a memorial for school responsibility and education values shall be built. These are the patrons. And it is happening, or happened last year, with Sasha Waltz, the choreographer, in Marl, in a city really struggling with its heritage, where the main question for the patrons group was how to remember the great democratic architectures they had in the city. And the solution the patrons asked for was to having a movement, to move these people who do not believe in artistic values in architecture, who came new into the city as refugees, or whoever was not participating in the democratic structures. They should discover and explore themselves what this city was built for after the war in the beginning. And the idea was to move the city if we talk about a movement. And the effect was that we, with Sesija, implemented thousands of groups of people who worked after choreographic structure Sesija developed and sort of a body language vocabulary people could use together in the city related to these architectures they wanted to memorize. And this was a year work right there. And in the end, a huge procession in the city. It was like a demonstration, a dance festival, and something you couldn't describe at the same time. And it was people of all ages, of all social backgrounds, people who never, ever were interested in dancing instead of football, like you see here clearly. And you saw a body language in choreography and dancing that could begin with dancing and ending up in body language on football courts. And that's the end of what I wanted to show you in the end in a post-industrial Western city in Northern Westphalia, where for me something miraculous happened about what New Pattern stands for, that you can connect these people who never expected to be connected, and that you can involve people who never thought that they could be involved. And professional dancers taking care for older people involved in the choreography, kids saying it's the first time that they were seen on in the public sphere, were part of the project. And you can see easily, if you want to convince the funding people in the ministry about that New Patterns projects can have impact, you see an impact in a city where the prognosis was, when we came there, that no one would participate in any public art structure because people have just other sorrows and other things to think about. That's what I wanted to show, and I hope that my idea to say how we come from these first questions, how can I memorize architecture, to come to the artistic counter-reaction, let's start a movement, is something why I believe that New Patterns still is an actual and relevant structure, why we of course still have to think about how the protocol is reinterpreted after 30 years, or how we think about genius ideas, about genius subjects like artists or mediators or whoever in the project, how this can be actualized in a way how we do projects right now. Thank you very much.